Hello there, I'm Kios the Ronin Beatmaker, and welcome to Lounge Ronin. All things, everything. If you're new to the channel, please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. And on this episode, we're going to discuss the Temple of Ninmakh, home to the goddess of mankind. And as I like to state, this is a light introduction. So if this information inspires you or scratches that inquisitive itch, please, I implore you to go out there and do your own research, as you may be surprised as to what you discover about the past and the world and yourself. Let's get into it. This article was written March 2nd, 2024 by Caleb Strum. Babylon's Temple of Ninmakh, the Mesopotamian goddess of humankind. One of the great temples constructed during the Neo-Babylonian period, 626 to 539 BC, the golden age of the city of Babylon, was the Temple of Ninmakh. The temple was built adjacent to the famous processional way and the Ishtar Gate, the main gate that led into the city of Babylon, and stood as a testament to divine reverence and architectural mastery. Within the inner sanctum of the Temple of Ninmakh was a woman-exclusive zone where devotees would gather to engage in ritual bathing rites and pray for their children and marriages. The cult of Ninmakh was notable for being a woman-centered cult, while the Temple of Ninmakh reflected the profound veneration to the goddess that created humankind. In modern times, humans have similarly sought to create new forms of intelligence, paralleling the divine act of Ninmakh in shaping humanity. Now, I find this very interesting, and it actually aligns perfectly with what's kind of been going on recently with Disney Star Wars and the fact that they have now introduced a new cult of women, a force cult of women who use the force. And it seems like to me there might be a little correlation between the Temple of Ninmakh and the women cult and what's going on in the Disney Star Wars TV show, The Acolyte, where you have these women who essentially adhere to the Force, but in a very more complex manner, where they seem to adhere more to the dark side of the Force as opposed to the light. Yet they still believe in the Force being the center of all creation. So there seems to be something interesting here. And I may have to cover that in my Star Wars live stream that I may do today, actually inspired by this episode of Lounge Ronin. But what I'm trying to get at is that these ideas of female cults, of mysticism, and of religion is nothing new. And it still permeates today when we have various nunneries. But I'm just seeing some interesting correlation. Just wanted to get that thought out there. But let's continue. Exploring the temple of Ninmakh in the context of Babylon's Golden Age. The worship of Ninmakh, also called Nimma, Nintor, or Belet Ili in Mesopotamian literature, dates to at least the 3rd millennium BC, when she held a prominent role as a Sumerian fertility deity, found within ancient epics such as Akkadian, Atrahasis, and the Sumerian Enki and Nimma, which recount her role in the creation of humanity. In these early epics, Ninmakh initially stood alongside major deities of the Sumerian pantheon, including Enlil, An, and Enki. Yet it appears that her prominence waned during the 2nd millennium BC, likely influenced by shifting theological trends favoring male deities during the reign of Hammurabi of Babylon, who ruled from 1792 to 1750 BC. The enduring antiquity of tales surrounding Ninmah prompts speculation that the temple to Ninmah, erected during the Neo Babylonian period, might have drawn inspiration from a far older sanctuary. Nevertheless, understanding the rationale behind the Neo Babylonian kings' zeal to resurrect their Sumerian and Akkadian heritage necessitates a deep dive into historical context. The city of Babylon itself, with roots stretching back to the 23rd century BC, evolved from a provisional outpost under the third dynasty of Ur to a formidable capital of an Amorite kingdom in 1894 BC, established by King Sumerabum, the first of the Amorite dynasty in Babylon. However, Babylon truly flourished as a political powerhouse under the leadership of King Hammurabi, 1792 to 1750 BC, whose reign saw the city ascend to the status of the political capital of southern Mesopotamia. In 1595 BC, Babylon was raided by the Hittites, leading to nearly a millennium of foreign rule by the succession of empires before native control of the city was reestablished during the Neo Babylonian period. Despite enduring foreign incursions, Babylon retained its allure, serving as the focal point of successive empires until its resurgence during the Neo Babylonian epoch. In 626 BC, Babylon experienced a resurgence under the Chaldean leader named Nabopolassar, who made Babylon the capital of his kingdom after the death of the Assyrian ruler Assurbanipal. Assurbanipal. Assurbanipal, under the son Nebuchadnezzar II, 605 to 561 BC. Babylon became an imperial city as the center of the Neo Babylonian Empire. This period was arguably the golden age of Babylon, marked with the construction of iconic landmarks such as the Ishtar Gate and the Personal Way. Both were erected as prominent features of the city's main entrance, symbolizing Babylon's grandeur and cultural richness, and were decorated with vibrant glazed brick reliefs of lions, bulls, and dragons. The lions were a symbol of the goddess Ishtar, the goddess of love, sexuality, and personification of the planet Venus. Now, where do you think the Greek got some of their inspirations from? Let's continue. Among these agricultural marvels stood the Temple of Ninmah, strategically positioned near the processional way and the Ishtar Gate, understanding its significance within Babylon's urban tapestry, reflecting the conservative ethos of Neo Babylonian rulers. These constructions were imbued with the reverence of Babylon's ancestral legacy, paying homage not only to the deities like Ninmah, but also to the forebearers who shaped Babylon into the beacon of greatness. And here we have a replica of the Ishtar Gate located in the Babylon ruins of Iraq. The original remains on display at the Paragon Museum in Berlin, Germany. Tracing the history of the Temple of Ninmah. The Temple of Ninmah was composed of a courtyard surrounded by rooms, including the sacred room in which the statue of Ninmah was located. The temple appears to also have been a sort of community center where people would gather to discuss important matters and consult the priests. In this way, it was a political and cultural focus of the city as well as a religious or cultic focus. Within the inner courtyard of the temple was a holy well, one of several holy wells located within sacred precincts around the city of Babylon. The inner sanctum of the Temple of Ninmah was restricted to women who would use the well waters to perform ritual bathing. It is also where women would offer up prayers for their marriages, for offspring and success in childbirth. The Temple of Ninmah underwent multiple cycles of destruction and reconstruction throughout its history. Archaeological findings reveal a unique pattern. With each rebuilding effort, the temple was erected several meters higher than its previous incarnation. This incremental approach to reconstruction has resulted in the preservation of some of the original white lime gypsum plaster walls from earlier versions of the temple. Archaeologists have also found that not all the temple's construction phases occurred during the Neo Babylonian period. The current paved floor of the temple, for example, does not date to the Neo Babylonian period, but to the Parthian period, 247 BC to 224 AD. While there is no direct historical evidence mentioning its destruction, the Temple of Nimka was likely destroyed or at least damaged after the rebellion against the Persian king Xerxes I in 482 BC, when the city's fortifications and its temples were destroyed by Persian forces. The Temple of Nimka may have also been rebuilt or repaired after 331 BC, when Alexander the Great captured Babylon and ordered the restoration of its temples. Before his death in 323 BC, Alexander the Great intended to make Babylon the capital of his new empire. The continued use of the temple into the Parthian period, implied by Parthian era paved flooring of the temple, suggests that the cult of Nimka was an important part of Babylonian culture and religion as late as the 3rd century BC, if not later. The Temple of Nimka was first excavated in modern times by the Coldway Archaeological Expedition, which took place from 1899 to 1914. In the 1980s, it was reconstructed with the help of Iraq archaeologists by order of then Iraq President Saddam Hussein, as part of an attempt to reconstruct the glories of Iraq's Babylonian past for heritage purposes. Yeah, we saw how well that turned out. And as I've stated in a previous episode, I talked about how there are rumors that the US invaded Iraq under the guise of mass weapons of destruction for uh, hidden and lost ancient technology. But perhaps maybe I'll do a little deep dive on that sometime in the future. Let's continue. Despite popular Despite popularity in renovations, the Temple of Nimka has faced degradation due to water damage from a rising water table and precipitation of waterborne mineral salts, among other maintenance issues. Despite this, the Temple of Nimka remains an enduring legacy of the Mesopotamian art, religion, and culture. Here we have the cylinder seal, possibly depicting Nimka of Mesopotamian mythology, sitting on a throne surrounded by worshippers. Nimka in Babylonian mythology. Nimka plays an important role in several early Sumerian epics and the Sumerian mother goddess and the goddess of childbirth, fertility, and the creator of humanity. In one early Sumerian account, Enki and Nimah, the goddess of Nimah and Enki, compete to create creatures out of clay, culminating in the creation of humans. The motivation for this competition is to create beings that will do manual labor that the gods are tired of doing. Shout out to Eric von Daneman. Alrighty. Nimka's role as creator of humanity involves in the later epic Atratheus, 18th century BC. The Akkadian flood story. Huh. Where have we heard of a flood story before as well? Hmm. According to Atrahasis' epic, the lower gods served the greater gods through digging canals and performing other manual labor. Eventually, the lower gods become fed up with being treated as laborers and revolt against the greater gods. They storm the house of the great god Enlil, demanding a change to the situation. The divine assembly responds by commissioning the goddess of Nimka, referred to as Nintu, Mami, or Belet Eli in the epic, to create humanity. Nimka, in cooperation with other gods, creates humanity from mud and the blood of a slain god. This divine genesis imbues humanity with a sacred essence, despite essentially being created to do the dirty work of the gods. As humanity flourishes and multiplies, their clamor and presence grow palpable, disrupting the tranquil order of the divine realm. Faced with the begrudging noise of humanity, the gods reach a fateful decision to enact a cataclysmic purge, seeking to wipe humanity from the face of the earth. The only survivor is a man named Atrasis and his family who built a boat for themselves and animals they chose to save. I'm going to repeat that again. The only survivor is a man named Atrasis and his family who built a boat for themselves and the animals they chose to save. The most well known version of this story is, of course, the biblical account of the flood of Noah. After the flood, the gods are still concerned about human population growth, so they inflict humanity with dangerous childbirth to control the population. Nimka is placed in charge of overseeing human childbirth, or perhaps more accurately, birth control. So the story of the Great Flood predates Christianity, which I have already covered. If you're interested in understanding that, check out my Martin Luther King and the Egyptian Connection, where we cover the origins of Christianity essentially, and dare say Judaism a bit as well. So this should not be as a surprise to anyone, and if it is, get with the times. But just so you know, a lot of these biblical stories are from much older civilizations, just curated. That's pretty much all it is. Let's continue. And I do find it interesting that she was essentially the goddess of birth control. And if you look into the whole idea of the Anunnaki and coming from Nibiru, this is kind of this is their story essentially. What you're hearing is the Anunnaki story. Let's continue. Although she was de-emphasized, possibly after the reign of Hammurabi, Nimka continued to be a deity associated with childbirth and fertility. The Babylonians appear to have seen her as a benevolent deity, a friend of humanity, especially to women in childbirth. In this sense, the Babylonian Nimka shares parallels with the Egyptian goddess Isis, since both were revered for her nurturing and protective qualities. Nimka, Nimka is similar to Isis, held prominent as a benevolent mother goddess within the ancient Mesopotamian pantheon. While her influence endured for centuries, it gradually waned with the decline of Babylonian civilization and the rise of new religious beliefs during the Hellenistic and Roman periods, i.e., Christianity. Here we have the interior of the Temple of Nimka at the ancient city of Babylon in Iraq. Nimka and humanism. Every creation story reveals what a culture thought about itself and the human condition. Within Mesopotamian mythology, humanity's role is often portrayed as that of a laborers for the gods, suggesting a view of human existence centered around servitude. The gods were tired of digging ditches, so they created humans to do the work for them. After the flood in the Arathsis, humanity is revealed to have another role: to feed the gods and provide sacrifices. Nimka distinguishes herself among the Mesopotamian deities by portraying humanity as more than mere servants to the gods. Rather than emphasizing servitude, Nimka's role seems to have been declared to serving humanity. They held responsibility for ensuring successful childbirth and the survival of offspring, highlighting her nurturing and protective qualities. The placement of her temple alongside those of other major deities at the main entrance of Babylon suggests that the Babylonians recognized her importance. Access to the goddess of Nimka was essential for humanity's survival, ensuring successful reproduction and the continuation of generations. Nimka, in her role as a creator of humanity, both similar to and different from the Greek titan Prometheus, humanity's creator in Greek mythology. Ninka and Prometheus share a common thread in their benevolence towards humanity as their creators. The difference, however, lies in the extent to which they advocate for humanity. Prometheus aligns himself with humanity by stealing fire from the gods and bestowing it upon them, an act for which he incurs severe punishment from Zeus. Conversely, while Ninka exhibits benevolence towards humanity, her actions ultimately serve the interests of the gods, particularly in regulating human population through childbirth, even as some women beseech her aid in matters of childbirth and marriage. Prometheus is often thought as a liberator of humanity in modern times. Nimka, on the other hand, is more like humanity's breeder, working on behalf of the Mesopotamian gods to produce good slaves, but also to keep the human population from getting out of control. This is not to say that the Greek gods were perceived as more benevolent than the Mesopotamian gods per se, but the difference in the Greek myth and the Mesopotamian myth may suggest a difference in the theological anthropology of ancient Greeks versus the theological anthropology of the ancient Mesopotamians, including the Babylonians of the Neo Babylonian period. This contrast between Greek and Mesopotamian perspectives may imply that ancient Greek theological anthropology held a more optimistic view of human potential compared to that of ancient Mesopotamia. Shout out to Enki for that one. While Mesopotamian belief portrayed humans as a perpetual servants of the gods, Greek thought seemed to harbor a glimmer of hope for humanity's evolution beyond servitude. That's Enki right there for you. This theological difference is reflected in institutions such as the Temple of Ninka, which embodies Mesopotamian theological anthropology. Nimka and the modern world. Have humans become Nimka? The Sumerian gods' rationale for creating humanity mirrors the modern drive behind the creation of robots and artificial intelligence. Just as the gods fashioned humans to undertake tasks they deemed undesirable, we have similar engineered robots to tackle work that we find undesirable or unpleasant. Just as Nimkon created humans to reduce the labor required of the Mesopotamian gods, humans have created robots and AIs to reduce the labor required of humans. Unlike the humans of Mesopotamian mythology who had no hope of usurping the gods, there is fear that artificial intelligence may be able to do just that. It likely never occurred to the ancient Babylonians that they could replace their mother goddess, but we fear that this might occur with our AI and robotic creations. The human Nimka fears being replaced in her own temple. Have humans followed the role of Nimka only to find themselves in the role of Prometheus instead? The original Babylonian temple of Nimka is now a ruin that has been abandoned by humans. The temple to human Nimka may end up being populated by humanity's successors. And there you have a light introduction into the temple of Nimka, home to the goddess of mankind. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Lounge Ronin. All things, everything. If you've made it this far, please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. And until next time, stay positive, stay focused, stay true, and much love.